Alright, so this chapter had us in suspense for a long while, it felt. For the first time in a while, I read the spoilers, and then the spoilers for this chapter got more detailed and got even crazier. Now that the chapter's dropped, it's gotten even crazier. It was such a ride. But here it is, chapter 1037. This video will contain spoilers for the latest chapter, so if you aren't caught up, catch up, and then watch this video. So starting off, I think the chapter cover is pretty interesting. It'll line up really well and gives me a good title for my Sanji extension video related to the Vince smokes. If you haven't watched the Sanji video yet, go watch it. Part 3 and the extended parts are coming soon. So getting into the chapter itself, we start out in the flower capital in Wano. I love when we get a setting establishing panel to give us more context of the situation. I've been wondering for a while now, with how close Onigashima is supposed to be to the flower capital, if the people can see it. Interestingly enough, it doesn't seem like anyone really notices it. Maybe it has to do with the fact that apparently it's a tradition to be absolutely wasted for the fire festival, so most of the adults are probably too far gone to look up into the sky. But wait a second, sky lanterns? All of those lanterns with wishes on them? That's definitely going to come back later in the story. Maybe there will be messages for Odin that will give Momo or Yamato or Luffy the last bit of strength they need to push through, but this is kind of a funny idea. And I got it because I was recently looking at oh wow, wait, this actually might relate. Okay, so you guys remember how Kaido tried to unalive himself by trying to jump off a sky island? That wasn't just any sky island. That was a sky island called Balloon Terminal, where Oda says it's held up by the lost balloons with enough willpower to survive. They all gather underneath that one spot in the world and hold up that island. I wonder if these sky lanterns are going to play a role in holding up Onigashima. That would be insane, but regardless of how it pans out, I think it will play a role for sure later on. Now we get to the main attraction, Luffy versus Kaido. It opens up with Kaido downing the rest of his drink and getting wasted. He goes on a tangent about how it's a party, so he's drinking, and then bursts out into laughter mid-fight. So Luffy initiates an attack, but then Kaido says getting drunk doesn't weaken him. And then he says the most important line that we have to hear from any boss that Luffy fights to know we are definitely making progress. Kaido says, "I've already acknowledged your strength. I can't remember the last time I was challenged to a serious one-on-one fight." I really want to talk about that sentiment, but it's way too long, but I feel like it's super important to understand for like the power ceiling in One Piece, so I'll talk about that in another video. But so Kaido goes into the laughing drunk mode and slam jams Luffy into the skull dome and cracks the dome, scaring everyone beneath. This is just setting up the rest of the fight for absolute greatness, peak fiction. Kaido then goes into different drunk phases ranging from sad, crying, and then finally angry. Each different phase brings out a different emotion and even confidence. Like sad Kaido seems super depressed and down on himself. Maybe this is Kaido that jumped off the island? Crying Kaido seemed like a rampaging toddler, especially because in this mode is when Luffy dodged the attack and slammed Kaido back pretty hard. But then Kaido grabs Luffy and we get the classic Luffy headbutt. The amount of brain damage Luffy should have by this point in the series is absurd, but his brain is made of rubber, so it probably can't get concussed. Oh wow, wait, I never really thought of that. Luffy is immune to concussive brain damage, either because he's already brain damaged or because it's not like you can rattle his brain really. Everything just bounces around. So after the headbutt, Luffy realizes Kaido's haki is getting stronger, and that's where angry Kaido comes out. I think the most important thing for me here was that anger was tied to haki strengthening. There's definitely an emotional aspect tied to haki, so if you're interested in what might be possible with emotional haki, check out my Sanji video. I talk about some crazy potentials there, and I wonder if we might get to see some of that in this fight, since this seems like the beginning of the end of Luffy's fight with Kaido. And if this pattern consists, then we're probably going to get a wide spectrum of emotions coming out of Kaido. I wonder if this will be the catalyst towards a new type of haki understanding. Something I've been thinking about is that during the time skip, Luffy had 6 months alone on the island, if I'm correct. So Rayleigh was there for 1.5 years, and we saw flashbacks of Rayleigh guiding Luffy through Gear 4 and then Future Sight, but then there's the 6 months where Luffy was alone. I wonder what he could have trained during that time. And if we hold the 3D 2Y movie as canon, at least the Red Hawk Awakening part, that was supposedly before the last 6 months of the time skip, Red Hawk came out of Luffy when he got angry. So is it that Luffy explored emotional haki during the last 6 months on the island? Probably not. I don't know. I'm just trying to make those last 6 months make sense. And if we're going to get an emotionally unstable Kaido, then maybe we'll see some interesting haki manifestations come out of that. But so going back, after this, Kaido and Luffy engage in the classic barrage section of a major fight, where Luffy typically pulls out his upgraded Gatling, so now it's rock Gatling, and Kaido is batting at them with his mace bat thing, and it ends with a sequence with Luffy slamming a Gear 3 kick into his stomach, causing Kaido's eyes to roll backwards, it seems. So just to recap this, Luffy has been in base this entire time, fighting drunk Kaido who is not weakened, acknowledged Luffy's power, and it seems like emotionally unstable Kaido seems to add a bit of spontaneity in the fighting style, but that also benefits Luffy since he rolls with that kind of fight pretty well. Honestly, tactical Kaido seemed to have a bigger advantage over Luffy since he beat Luffy before and said Luffy was too crude with his techniques to be able to take on Kaido with just having learned Conqueror Haki imbuement. All that being said, I've been having this feeling that we may stumble upon a berserk Kaido. Given how over it he seemed before, it made sense to me that once Kaido finally got pushed, he would go berserk. And I think we may be going down that path, especially if alcohol is involved. What does berserk Kaido mean? Well, there's a possibility for an awakening. If we assume that awakenings means the person completely relinquishes their self-control and there's no reverting the transformation, then that would make sense as to why we have not seen any zone awakenings in Wano. That being said, drunk and wasted Kaido might lose self-control and resort to an awakening for a win, and go berserk as an awakened possible sentient dragon? I'm curious if we'll get more context to awakened zones. Considering Doflamingo awakened, Katakuri made awakenings seem commonplace almost, both Law and Kid awakened, there were the impelled down to awakened Zoans. It seems like if we were to learn about Zoan awakenings, it would be in Wano. And then on top of that, with Kid and Law awakening, it makes sense if Luffy also awakens, which would kind of mean Big Mom awakens, or if she already awakened, like is Bigger Mom the awakened form of Big Mom? Also, this is probably around the time we should be getting Kaido's backstory, right? Like Kaido got beat up a little, so we should get his story for us to understand him. I'm super excited for that. Are we actually going to get Joy Boy Stan Kaido, or is it going to be pure evil Kaido? The way it's set up seems like it's going to be sad. Like, how did young Kaido end up spiraling into this depressed alcoholic mess we see now? But okay, I have more stuff to talk about for the Luffy versus Kaido part, but I can't keep delaying talking about the elephant in the room. And by room, I mean Wano, and by elephant, I don't mean Jack. But okay, let me go in order here. So we get a Gorosei scene. The last time I think we've seen them was in chapter 908, where we got to see the giant straw hat, Eam, and the giant empty throne. So this is kind of crazy. They start off talking about the cursed reverie that even Garp said was a bad one, but they also wanted to ignore it and focus on Wano. So it seems like they've been keeping up to date about Wano, and I'm going to assume that the voices that were commanding the mass CP0 members earlier was actually the Gorosei, and that makes so much sense now. I remember when I reacted to that chapter before, I was thinking who could possibly be saying this to these people? Those mass members can handle themselves, but now it makes sense if it was the Gorosei that was directing them. But they seem to be out of the loop because they assume Nico Robin is captured, and then they say something that's a little cryptic. By the progression of the speech bubbles, you'd assume that when they say, "This is our chance to erase that nuisance," you'd assume it was about Nico Robin. But the orders for Nico were for her to be captured, not killed. Even there it says apprehended, right? It seems like Nico Robin is wanted alive by CP0 and the Gorosei, which makes sense since she is super valuable, but also makes it kind of confusing because if it was for her ability to read poneglyphs, why would the world government care since they should already know the true history, right? There has to be something else they need her for. Otherwise it would make more sense for them to just kill her rather than apprehend her. So the nuisance they want to erase might be referring to what we saw of the Gorosei the last time, the 4 flyers that Eam had, of Shirahoshi, Vivi, Luffy, and Blackbeard. And then Eam, who seemed to be carrying Vivi's unharmed picture to the empty throne, the Gorosei asked, "Have you decided upon another light to be erased from history? Simply state the name you wish stricken." So I'd assume the nuisance would be someone among these 4, and if they're talking about in the context of the war where Big Mom and Kaido are present, the only person there that Eam had a flyer for was Luffy? That one will be an interesting thing to see. The obvious answer seems like Luffy, but the Gorosei scenes always are more cryptic than we can ever realize in the present time. Their scenes are usually only ever fully realized in hindsight. But so we're finally at the part that got the most attention during the spoilers. There was a government agent on a world government boat on the way to Wano, it seems, in contact with the Gorosei. They relay just this information. The government agent says there's a giant shadow. Then the Gorosei ask, "What is it?" And the guy says, "No idea, an island?" Before getting any other information, it seems like the Gorosei panic. The old dude with the crazy mustache goes, "That's impossible. That fruit is nothing but a legend now, even for us. It hasn't awakened in centuries." And the youngest looking Gorosei member says, "How else do you explain the world government giving a specific devil fruit a unique name?" And then we as the viewers see the shadow is Zunisha, and there's no communication telling the Gorosei that it's actually not a random giant shadow island, and it's just a random giant elephant. So based on the way the panels progressed, I think the Gorosei scene here was another cryptic foreshadowing thing. It seemed like they panicked at the info before getting the full picture. But the appearance of Zunisha here is a completely bonkers thing to happen, because that's just absurd. There's literally so much going on in this chapter. What in the world? We had no inkling that Zunisha would be coming. But okay, so to take this in order, I think the Gorosei are saying there's a fruit that they hid from people that relates to a giant shadow island, because that is the information that preceded their outburst. This shadow island has to be so absurdly impactful to their world that they panic like this. It hasn't awakened in centuries might not necessarily mean an awakening, but rather someone with the ability has never shown this power potential. That being said, they said the fruit is nothing but a legend for us now. So this fruit might be completely new to us also, but okay, this might be a shot in the dark, but I thought of two things. Anel? Could they be talking about Anel? That fruit would be an absurd fruit to appear. That would be literally shocking news. And the specific reason is because of that ability Anel showcase that creates a giant shadow dark island looking thing. That would be absolutely wild. And I'm gonna be honest, if you think that's wild, well, I think it's wild that Zunisha just appeared with no foreshadowing at all. But it's here now. So who's to say Oda doesn't just bring Anel back here? Okay, but the other thing I was thinking about was Bej, who saw this dark cloud island thing that sucked things up into it during the time skip. That might be what the Gorosei were thinking and were afraid of. And if you're wondering why I remember that, it's because it's relevant to the series I'm working on with Mosh. I'm not lying when I say that series is groundbreaking. But just going back and tying what the Gorosei meant by specific devil fruit name change, this part meant a lot to me. One, it confirms the Gorosei control information super hard, especially about the devil fruits, to the point that they could rename fruits and that's just what the world accepts them as. But the second thing is that it seems like there was a world government that predates the Gorosei, so they aren't exactly immortals. I'm not too sure. I want to wait for the official translation for that note. But I think like it took us nearly 129 chapters to get an inkling of what they were talking about the last time they appeared. I think that might be the same thing here, where we won't really understand what they're talking about for a little while at least. The cryptic nature of their presence seems to persist even now. That being said, the elephant is still in the room, like literally on the room. Can someone send me a picture of what Zunisha will look like next to Wano? Because I'm still a little confused. Apparently Sky Islands are 20 kilometers high and Zunisha is 35 kilometers high, and Wano is how high? So are the Minks all going to rain down on Wano in Sulong form, except for Beppo, obviously, because we won't ever see Beppo's Sulong form apparently. And then how did Zunisha get here and why? My thought at the moment, it's kind of interesting because just like last chapter, I compared the situation on Wano with Onigashima to feel kind of like Noah over Fishman Island. And there we had Shirahoshi, whose Poseidon powers gives her command over Sea Kings. So when she desired for it hard enough, they listened to her commands, they saved Luffy and caught the ship that was just massive. This might be the exact same situation here, where Momonosuke, who's willing so hard for the island to not fall on his people, his capital, and his home, that he ended up unintentionally calling Zunisha over to help him carry the island. So Zunisha is here to just lift up the island. I mean, I guess given how big Zunisha is, it was probably like 5 steps for Zunisha, but I imagine this appearance will help us learn of the Kozuki and Mink relations in the past, and how they connected in the first place. It might make sense that Zunisha's original command may have originated on Wano, since Tama's fruit was there. I feel like we're finally going to get so many answers, and this will be a goldmine for information and, more importantly, connections. I'm going to end this chapter reaction here. If you like hearing me talk about the chapters like this, please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you guys for connecting with me. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all on the next Part Vision.